Hi, I'm the Sad Panda, and this is going to be another episode in my series where I read books. And this is going to be the next chapters 31 through 40 of Super Gene. Chapter 31, Free Training Partner. I'll fight her. She's just a woman, after all, Hansen whispered to himself. Hansen knew that Shin would not leave him alone no matter how he restrained himself, so he would no longer do that. He had almost mastered Ghost Haunt, and it would be great for him to practice it on her. When Hansen stood in front of Shin in a combat suit, she didn't spare any effort and kicked him with a leg sweep. For Hansen, who was good at sneak attacks, as long as he had no chance to sneak up, he was doomed to lose. Hence, Shin hit first and didn't give Hansen any chance. But she still had committed a great mistake. She still didn't take Hansen seriously enough and did not regard him as an opponent. All she wanted to do was kick his ass. That's why she didn't use even half her strength. In her mind, he was an ignorant ass freak, a rookie who could be bullied by anyone in the shelter. Shin did not really want to harm Hansen, so she wasn't hitting hard. But what she didn't know was that Hansen now had 18 Sacred Geno points and was practicing Jade Skin. Although not as fit as her, the gap between them was not so big either. Seeing the leg sweep, Hansen moved to a spot where Shin couldn't reach and twisted her leg with his arms. She immediately lost balance and fell to the ground. Hansen immediately pressed himself against her and locked her limbs down. Shin hadn't expected such a nifty moves from him, and when she realized her mistake, she was trapped and couldn't wiggle free. Feeling anger and shame, she struggled and failed because of the clever techniques of Ghost Haunt. If she struggled with all her strength, her arms would be dislocated or even broken. Trapped by Hansen, she blushed and still couldn't believe Hansen had taken her from the first move. She wanted to teach him a lesson, and everything went wrong. Station Master, did I win? Hansen was secretly pleased. I did not expect old devil's teachings to work. I even beat Shin. You will never win. Shin raged and refused to throw in the towel. If it was anyone else, it might be fine, but for the despicable ass freak, she would not bow her head. Shin roared and shapeshifted into a golden lion taller than a man. Hansen was thrown off of her instantaneously, and the lion swooped down at him. Foul! We have agreed not to use beast souls, Hansen quickly shouted. Shin paused as her lion paw was about to hit him. She did promise last time that she wouldn't use beast souls, but under the circumstances, she had completely forgotten about it. All right, no beast souls. Shin secretly blushed, took back her beast soul, and launched an attack with her fist. Hansen still hadn't completely mastered Ghost Haunt, and his fitness and experience fell short compared to Shin. Although he resisted over 20 movements from her, he was still beat. Shin did not say anything and turned away. In fact, she felt ashamed because if she hadn't used her beast soul, she couldn't have gotten rid of Hansen, so she had already lost at that moment. I'm still not strong enough. My Geno points and fighting skills are not even close to hers. Hansen knew that he couldn't have caught up to the best in Steel Armor Shelter in such a short amount of time. While he was still a little disappointed that he couldn't even take 30 movements from her. Shin was still blushing after a shower. She was truly abashed that she was put in such a position by Ass Freak. Something is wrong. Although his wrestling skills were not bad, he couldn't have locked me down without great fitness. How did he get so many Geno points? Thought Shin suddenly. She quickly recalled the data collected by Hansen's combat suit. Shin clenched her teeth. Shin clenched her lips and cursed bitterly. That bastard. He must have maxed out on mutant Geno points already. He was just playing weak to make me underestimate him. Ass freak, I'll never make peace with you. From then on, every time Hansen passed the teleporter, Shin would always call him into the combat room. Hansen was glad to oblige. Wrestling skills such as Ghost Haunt really needed much practice, and while a training partner as good as Shin, he could not really hone his techniques. Some pain was nothing compared to his gain. If it was not for Shin, Hansen could only practice while risking his life, which was far more dangerous than his fights with her. Of course, Hansen was careful so that she did not notice he was using her. Each time, he would get on her nerves on purpose so that she would keep calling him to the combat room. Shin picked on Hansen many times, but still didn't get over it. Every time she saw his smiling face, she would get mad and have the urge to beat him up. It almost became a habit of hers. Chapter 32. A Ritual Between Men. The copper-toothed beast fed by Hansen had become purple in color and bigger in size 2 months after it had become a mutant creature. Whether I can keep raising in the world depends on you. Please become a sacred blood creature soon. Hansen looked at the purple color of its skin and thought it was about time. Judging from the situation, it would take about 3 months for a mutant creature to evolve into a sacred blood creature. This period was neither too long nor too short. It was almost impossible for most people to hunt a sacred blood creature in just 3 months. Even Xin Shen might not be able to hunt a sacred blood creature for a year. Now, with the black crystal, Hansen could have an entire sacred blood creature to his own every 3 months, which was simply incredible. Just give me enough time and I could easily evolve with all four types of genopoints maxed out. By then, I will gain the title of Sacred Blood Aristocrat for sure. Hansen was getting excited. He did not see Xinshen at the teleport station on his way home. She could be either tired of his game or simply busy. Outside the station, he saw a girl standing at the roadside and stopped walking. It was Zhu Ji, the girl who grew up with Zhang Denfang and him. Zhu Ji was from a single-parent family, and her mother had raised her by working at Hansen's father's factory with no one to babysit her. Her mother had often brought her to work, and she always played with Zhang Denfang and Hansen. Later, Hansen heard that Zhu Ji's father was still alive and found her mother and her. After his dad's incident, Hansen didn't have the energy to learn more about her family. But he did hear that she was an illegitimate daughter, and her father only took her back after his wife passed away. Sen, Zhu Ji saw Hansen and exclaimed, "Why are you here?" Hansen asked, puzzled. "Sen, I'm over 16 and I can enter God's sanctuary now." Zhu Ji chuckled and said, "So fast?" Hansen was startled. In his mind, Zhu Ji was a little girl, and now she could even enter God's sanctuary. "I'm only a few months younger than you. Don't think of me as a child," Zhu Ji said discontentedly. "Indeed, how time flies." Hansen looked at her well-developed body and smiled. She was no longer a little girl. Zhu Ji blushed as Hansen looked at her. When she was about to say something, there was a roar of an engine, and then they saw a well-dressed man coming down from a private aircraft parked on the roadside. The young man was about 20 years old, and the private aircraft alone was worth more than 10 million. "Sister, I said earlier to use the private teleport equipment. It's just inevitable that we meet some annoying people at the teleport station." The young person did not even look at Hansen and went straight to Zhu Ji. "Brother, he is my childhood friend," Zhu Ji quickly exclaimed. "Well, we should be going." The young man ignored her explanation, took her hand, and led her to the aircraft. "Sen, I'll come back," Zhu Ji said to Hansen softly before she left. The young person returned to warn Hansen. "People like you aren't worthy to be her friend. Leave her alone or you'll be sorry." "Are you talking to me?" Hansen glanced at him. "You don't believe what I said?" The young man suddenly stepped forward and quickly hit Hansen's lower abdomen with his knee. He was very close to Hansen and was incredibly fast. His knee suddenly came toward Hansen. Hansen looked calmly, but secretly sneered. "Nothing is better for wrestling than Ghost Hunt. Even Xin Shen dares not get close to me now." Leaning to one side, Hansen avoided the knee and struck a leg behind the young man's leg on the ground. Hansen also clamped the young man's neck and pulled hard. Bang! The young man suddenly lost his balance and fell to the floor. Lying on the ground, he looked at Hansen in shock and forgot to get up. He didn't expect his hit would be in vain, and he couldn't even believe that he was pulled down by Hansen. "Sen, what happened?" Seeing things going wrong, Zhu Ji ran down the aircraft and quickly helped the young man up. "Nothing, just a ritual between men. It is late and I need to go. Let's eat together sometime." Hansen smiled and waved goodbye and went to the train station. "Brother, you all right?" Zhu Ji asked the young man. "Interesting, really interesting." The young man watched Hansen leaving with a strange smile. Seeing the young man smiling, Zhu Ji was suddenly anxious. "Brother, don't pick on him. He didn't mean it." "He could make me fall, even when he didn't mean it. If he meant it, then would I, Fang Jin Qi, be killed?" he said with his eyes narrowed. "Brother, that's not what I meant." Zhu Ji panicked and did not know how to explain. "No worries, sister. As he said, it was a ritual between men, and I shall return the favor." Fang Jin Qi stared frantically in the direction where Hansen went. "In a few days, please invite him to dinner at home." "What?" Zhu Ji looked at Fang Jin Qi and could not believe her own ears. Chapter 33. Polar Night Forum. Hansen didn't go far to hunt these days. He was on his own, so unless he went somewhere no one would go, it wasn't likely he could find a mutant or sacred blood creature before the gangs of Xin Shen, Son of Heaven, or Fiskai did. Hansen went to Skynet and logged into the forum called Polar Night, whose members were people from different planets currently struggling in God's sanctuary. Here, people from the same shelter could exchange information and needs. Although the Alliance had a similar official site, it was much easier for people to go on Polar Night because all you needed was a username. On the official site, you needed to register with your real identity. Not wanting anyone to know his identity, Hansen went to the selection of Steel Armor Shelter, where there was a lot of posts, roughly 1,000 or more per day. He went through the postings, most of which were buying or selling information, and then there was some recruiting information. For example, the rich would spend money to hire some people from the same shelter to help and protect their children. Recently, Hansen's luck had been poor. Not only couldn't he find any mutant creatures or sacred blood creatures, he also failed to gain any beast souls, so he decided to work for money. Hansen browsed for a while and saw a job posting that paid well. He was surprised to see that it was Lin Beifeng who posted it. Hansen hadn't seen him since the last time they met. It was unexpected that he had also posted in Steel Armor Shelter. Lin Beifeng was not only recruiting good men, but also making offers for beast souls and mutant creature flesh. He wanted all the good things and was willing to pay for them. People who answered the thread were mainly just onlookers. After all, the demands of mutant creature flesh and beast souls were so high that no one would sell easily. Hansen browsed a while and turned to other threads. Soon he found a satisfactory job. There were several young people who had just entered God's Sanctuary, hiring skilled hunters to help them kill primitive creatures. The requirement was that they would need to be able to deal with 10 primitive creatures and protect them at the same time alone. In a word, this was a babysitting job, watching these rookies fight primitive creatures and save them when they're encountering danger. This job was not difficult, but quite troublesome. Generally speaking, the experienced would not take such job, but these young men were paying well, 10,000 to protect them each day, and one contract would last half a month. Hansen sent a text to the number and they had left and didn't leave a voicemail or send an image of himself. He didn't want his personal information to leak out, and that was why he had chosen Polar Night. He could have gone to the official site where everything was regulated and protected by the law, but then he would have to sign in with his real identity. After a while, he received a reply which said that they had to see how well he could fight before deciding to hire him. Hansen had no problem with that and agreed to meet at a certain time and place in Steel Armor Shelter. After agreeing to meet, Hansen did not close the window but continued to browse the trading section. After his bronze crescent spear was destroyed, he had wanted to hunt himself a beast soul weapon, but he had no luck with a beast soul at all. Hansen wasn't trying to buy a weapon beast soul, but a man-made alloy bow and arrow. Alpha alloy weapons could now easily kill primitive beasts, but not mutant creatures. They were not cheap either, and normally even more expensive than primitive beast souls. Hansen could use most of the weapons, but he had worked hard on archery, since he had planned to hunt alone and from a distance before he even entered God's Sanctuary. But he overlooked something. He couldn't afford any good bow and arrows, and without those, he couldn't even pierce the skin of any creature. Now he had earned some money, and it would be possible for him to purchase an alloy bow and arrows, and he wanted to start hunting with archery. It was, after all, both a safe and powerful way of hunting. The most important thing was that, in God's Sanctuary, only the one who launched the last hit had the chance to gain the beast soul. And archery must be among the top 3 methods methods when it came to that potential windfall. Archery required special training, so most people preferred swords and knives. There weren't many posts about selling bows or arrows. Hansen was trying to save money, so he wanted to buy some second-hand goods. The alpha alloy bows alone cost more than $1 million, which was too expensive for him. The silver lining was that due to the unpopularity of archery, there were not many competing buyers either. Hansen noticed a post from 7 days ago written by someone who was about to go to Second God Sanctuary and planned to sell all of his belongings. All this stuff was sold except for an alloy bow and 6 alloy arrows. A bow from the Black Vader series and arrows from the Saber series. Hansen had practiced archery for a while and carefully studied all types of bows and arrows. To make weapons, the alloy didn't necessarily need to be the stiffest, because if it was too stiff, the edge would chip. However, stiff alloy didn't wear out very easily. Bows and arrows were no exceptions. There were 3 types of alloy used in the Black Vader bow. 2 were mixed into the bow itself in order to guarantee its flexibility and stiffness at the same time, and the alloy used to making the string was even more special. Its manufacturing method monopolized by a few interstellar metal production companies. The Black Vader series was a classic series of alloy bows, and the price was overwhelming. The cheapest one, the Wanderer's bow, cost $2 million, and no arrows or quiver was included in the price. Chapter 34, A Bow in Hand. The bow for sale in the post was Doomsday, in the Black Vader series, which costs $6,680,000 in the store. Its furthest range could reach 2,400 feet. Using this bow, saber arrows could pierce steel armor and skin of most primitive creatures from more than 900 feet away. However, one would need to have a 7.0 strength rating to draw the string of Doomsday. Normally, only those who had maxed out on mutant genopoints could reach a 7.0 strength rating, and this requirement was only to draw the string, unless you could kill with only one shot every time, so that you didn't need a second draw. You would need a rating of more than 8.0 to use the bow. Generally, if one had maxed out on original, primitive, and mutant genopoints, one's strength rating would reach 10.0, but many would choose to complete evolution and go to second God's Sanctuary before the rating even reached 8.0. No wonder no one would buy this bow. Those with the ability to use the bow wouldn't care about such a small amount of money and try to save it with a second-hand weapon. Those who couldn't use it wouldn't buy it either. Hansen sent the poster a message and offered $1 million for the bow and the arrows, which altogether would probably cost more than $7 million in the store. He had only kept $2 out of the $6 million he earned from selling the golden axe and gave the rest to his mother. Having spent $1 million on learning Ghost Haunt, he wasn't sure if he could purchase the bow and arrows with just $1 million. The poster didn't reply. He was either offline or didn't want to dignify his offer with a response. Hansen waited for more than a half hour and almost lost hope. He checked the other posts and found nothing. Well, some cheap stuff will have to do for now. Maybe I can get an arrow of a beast soul in a few days. Hansen comforted himself and went into the shower. When he was back in front of the screen, he found the poster had sent him a message, which only contained a web page of a well-known trading site, which the price was marked as $1 million. Hansen almost jumped for joy and paid for the items after confirmation. Soon the item was shipped and would reach planet Roka the next day. God's Sanctuary could be used as a transfer station for transporting goods produced in the Alliance, so many transactions between different planets were completed this way, and it was much faster than interstellar spaceship. The next morning, Hansen got a package from a robot postman. After signing for it, he couldn't wait to open it. The black and purple metal bow had a bowstring like a silver line. Holding the bow in his hands, Hansen immediately felt powerful. The bow was also carefully kept, and it looked almost like new except for a small scratch. 6 brand new saber alloy arrows were gleaming with a cold shine. To Hansen's surprise, they even came with a matching quiver. It was used, but there was no damage. A bow in my hand, the world is mine. I won't even have to risk approaching the next time I want to steal a sacred blood creature from Son of Heaven. Hansen stroked his bow and laughed. With no shooting range nearby, Hansen could only try to draw the string a few times. It was indeed quite heavy. Even with his strength, he could only draw a dozen times before his arms started to ache. Not bad. Hansen was pleasantly surprised. He hadn't tested his strength recently, but his rating must be more than 8.0 now, or else he couldn't draw the string so many times. Hansen went to a weapon shop nearby and bought 20 thunder arrows and 20 skyfall arrows. The quiver that could hold 50 arrows still looked a little empty, even with the arrows in it. Although these arrows had impressive names, they were in fact cheap. Each thunder arrow only cost 1,000, and only the arrowhead was made of alloy. It was too stiff and would chip easily on bones or shells. Skyfall arrows were even cheaper, 100 each. They looked like saber arrows but didn't function that well. Hansen only bought Skyfall arrows to practice with, as thunder arrows were too easy to break, and the 6 saber arrows were too expensive to be used for practicing. Hansen played with his new bow, Doomsday, for quite a while, and fell in love with it. When it was almost time for him to meet the young clients, Hansen took his bow and arrows and entered God's Sanctuary. When he arrived where they were supposed to meet, he saw dozens of people surrounding several young men in biological armor and realized that he wasn't the only candidate. Walking around to earn $10,000 per day seemed like a great deal for many. After all, a primitive creature was only worth several hundred, and it also took energy to hunt and move the dead creatures around. Hansen frowned at the crowd and was ready to turn away. He just wanted to find an easy job to earn some money. With such competition, he'd rather look for another job. When he was ready to leave, Han Hao and a few people came together. It looked like they were also coming for the young men. Well, well, Ass Freak here, looking sharp with the bows and arrows. Did you come to protect the masters as well? A young man next to Han Hao ridiculed him with a tone of exaggeration. His remark got the attention of the crowd. As Ass Freak was well known in Steel Armor Shelter, people suddenly started to heckle Han Sen. Ass Freak, who do you even think you are? Ass Freak, can you even kill an ordinary creature? It's more like the young masters will need to protect him. Chapter 35. Who should go? Ass Freak was so infamous that a torrent of scornful abuse was lavished at him. The young men who were paying came to them, and one of them, with a harsh, angular features, curiously looked at Han Sen and said, "You are the legendary Ass Freak?" "Yes," Han Sen answered casually. He did not think it was a bad thing, because in the entire Steel Armor Shelter, he was the only one who had ever stabbed Xin Shen in the butt. This was kind of an achievement in a sense. The young man was obviously curious about Han Sen, and suddenly he said, "You are also here for the job." Han Sen nodded. "If you don't like the idea, I can go right now." "No, if you don't have any questions, you can sign the contract right here," the young man quickly said. A roar went up within the crowd as they heard the young man's decision. Even the young man's friend looked surprised. They pulled the young man to the side and said, "Yoon, that's Ass Freak. What are we going to do with him?" "That's right, Yoon. If we're in danger, he'll probably run even faster than us. It's just a waste of money." "I've hired him, and you can choose the rest," the young man named Yoon insisted, and signed the contract with Han Sen. The others didn't say much after that, and they selected several more candidates who looked experienced. Han Hao showed them a mutant beast soul and was chosen. The two coming with Han Hao showed some skill and got the job as well. "Ass Freak, you got lucky thanks to your young master's kindness and curiosity," Liu Fang, one of the two, said when walking past Han Sen. "My luck has always been good," Han Sen said faintly. The clients had selected 10 experienced men to protect them in hunting primitive creatures. With such a team, they could even hunt a herd of primitive creatures. Those who had been hired were in a good mood and tried to flatter the clients all the time. They clearly understood the background of these young men who were paying them. The clients actually had very good fighting skills, and they must have graduated from posh schools. Although they had just entered God's Sanctuary, their fitness and skills were much better than Han Sen when he had just arrived. They were only lacking the experience of hunting. When the clients were hunting primitive creatures, Han Sen was just practicing his archery skills on the side. Initially, he had chosen to practice archery because it was less demanding than other weapons. He was unlikely to be able to learn advanced techniques of sword or knife in the public education system, while all he needed in archery was accuracy. Han Sen was still getting to know the performance and characteristics of Doomsday, so he had selected some of the trees nearby as targets to practice on. "Ass Freak, you're just taking up space. Why are you shooting in vain, ignoring all our clients?" Liu Fang was confused by Han Sen's behavior and looked at his shots contemptuously. "You can't even shoot something within 60 feet. Han Sen did not look at Liu Fang or reply to him. He was just trying the arrow and did not focus on the target, and that's why his shots looked messy. "Just let him be. It was a charity act. Our clients didn't expect him to help at all." Other hired hands laughed. "That's true. Just be grateful, Ass Freak." Liu Fang spit and joined the rest. "Do not say you know me," Han Hao found a chance to whisper to Han Sen and went back to laugh with his friends. The clients were making incredible progress. In the beginning, they needed some assistance, while they soon became better and could hunt rather vicious primitive creatures one-on-one. Indeed, posh schools had great teaching outcomes. Those who were in integrated compulsory education wouldn't dare to hunt primitive creatures alone with no previous experience. It went so well that everyone lost their vigilance. When the clients were hunting 3 primitive spotted beasts, one of the beasts played dead and attacked a young client when he approached it. Han Hao and the others didn't expect this, and the spotted beast was too close to the client for them to rescue. In an instant, the claws of the spotted beast were on the delicate neck of the young man. The young client was horrified, regretting that he wasn't wearing his alloy helmet, but it was far too late for that. Everyone watching screamed in horror. Whoosh! An arrow flew by the client's face and hit the spotted beast in the left eye. The beast whimpered and fell to the ground. Han Hao and the rest swarmed the spotted beast and cut its corpse to pieces. "Ass Freak, why did you shoot the arrow? You could have hurt King." Liu Fang turned around and scolded Han Sen. Other people all followed him, criticizing Han Sen. They were secretly ashamed, but instead of self-reflection, they chose to blame Han Sen. In their view, Han Sen just just shot the beast by pure luck, because Asfree could never be good at anything. Get lost, Yoon suddenly shouted with a dark face. Did you hear that, ass freak? Yoon just asked you to go, cried Liu Fang. I'm letting you go. Yoon stared at Liu Fang coldly. I paid you to protect us, and what did you do when King was in danger? Nothing. And now you even have the gall to blame the only person to do his job. All of you, get lost, and I don't want to see you again. Chapter 36, Archery Master. Yoon, you can let us go, but according to our contract, this is a breach. You'll have to pay us the rest of the money, sneered Liu Fang. Just go. Yoon threw a few stacks of money at them, and they didn't look at them again. Liu Fang and the rest picked up the money. Although they were angry, they didn't dare to harm the clients because they knew who these young clients were. They gazed at Hansen and said, Misters, we are far from the shelter, so please be careful as you are trusting someone unreliable. He is 100 times more reliable than you, Yoon replied. The hired ones didn't dare to express their anger in front of Yoon, so they just left. Ass, your arrow was so powerful, commented Keen. After the rest were chased away, he didn't want to call Hansen ass freak, but awkwardly discovered that he didn't know his name. His rating must have reached 7.0 to use Doomsday. Of course it was powerful, said Yoon. 7.0? But they said that King and the other clients looked at Hansen and his bow unconvinced. After all, the story of Asfree was well known that even they knew about it. I mean, at least 7.0. He shot so many arrows in practice that if his strength hadn't reached 8.0, it certainly wouldn't be easy for him, Yoon said, looking at Hansen. 8.0? They were even more surprised and kept looking at Hansen as if they'd never seen him before. Anyone with an 8.0 rating would be rather advanced in First God's Sanctuary, so they couldn't believe that Asfree would be so strong. Let me try your bow. One client still didn't believe Yoon's words. Hansen smiled and handed Doomsday to him. The young client held the bow in his hands and tried to pull the string. The string didn't even move. He tried a few more times and still failed to draw the string. Although they graduated from top schools and practiced hyper-geno arts as kids, their bodies hadn't been modified by geno points, so their strength could only reach 3.5 at best, which was far below the requirement to use Doomsday. You are so weak, let me... Another client could not stand to watch and grab the bow. He too failed after a few tries. Everyone gave it a shot except for Yoon, and none of them could draw the string. Only then had they felt impressed by Hansen. Archery was practiced by very few people and required a lot of effort, so most people didn't know much about bows or arrows, let alone how good Doomsday actually was. For example, Han Hao and his friends had no idea that Hansen's bow was worth millions, or they wouldn't have ridiculed him like that. The clients stopped underestimating Hansen, not least because Hansen also saved King's life. They asked his name and called him Sen from then on. After all, God's Sanctuary was a world where only the strong were respected, and Hansen's archery and strength were truly impressive. Sen, could you show us your real archery skills? King proposed. All the other clients looked at Hansen with great anticipation. My archery skills are just ordinary, Hansen laughed. Don't be modest. When one is being too modest, one is actually proud, King said. Okay, I'll try to shoot then. Hansen also itched to exercise his skills. Since he had received Doomsday, he hadn't tested its limits yet. The clients were overjoyed. Hansen looked around and walked to a hillside. He aimed at something and slowly drew a saber arrow. As he drew the string, blue and swollen veins popped on his arms. The arrow left the string in a blink of an eye and disappeared into the woods. Did he miss? King and the others didn't hear any prey being hit, and they thought he had missed. It is too far away. The woods must be at least 400 yards from here. It's understandable to miss, said King. Come on, let's go and find out, Hansen said and walked down the hill into the woods. The clients followed with suspicion. 100 meters into the woods, they saw a spotted beast nailed to a tree with an arrow through its head. No wonder we didn't hear anything. The arrow directly destroyed the nerves of the spotted beast that didn't even have time to shriek. Everyone was so impressed. It was at least 400 yards from where Hansen had been standing, and the beast was killed with just one shot. Hansen's archery must be among the best in First God's Sanctuary. After that, all the clients worshipped Hansen and did everything he said. Hansen protected them for half a month and received $150,000 in cash. The clients wanted to sign a long-term contract with Hansen, but he declined. He was only short on money at the moment. In the long run, he still needed to focus on his own evolution. Hansen returned to steel armor. Han Sen returned to Steel Armor Shelter alone and was stopped by those who had been chased away by Yoon at the gate. These men were led by Liu Fang, and Han Hao was also among them. "Ass freak, you have really pissed me off. How can you make it up to me?" asked Liu Fang, cracking his knuckles while slowly approaching Han Sen. Chapter 37. Whose Broadsword? A crowd of spectators started to gather. They're used to seeing Han Sen getting bullied. "How do you want me to compensate you?" said Han Sen calmly, watching Liu Fang approach him. "Let me kick your ass," Liu Fang said, throwing a punch at Han Sen's face. Liu Fang's punch was fierce and fast. If Han Sen was hit, his nose would be smashed. When everyone was thinking that he would suffer, Han Sen leaned his body and dodged the punch. Meanwhile, he tripped Liu Fang with his leg and made him fall on his face. Liu Fang fell so hard that his nose was bleeding and his eyes were watering. Burning with anger, he drew his alpha alloy broadsword from the sheath and slashed it towards Han Sen. "Little scum, how dare you resist? I'll kill you." Han Hao had mixed feelings about this. Although he despised Han Sen was still his cousin, and Han Hao felt terrible watching him getting bullied and perhaps getting killed. But if he helped Han Sen and people knew him to be the cousin of Ass Freak, how could he stay in Steel Armor Shelter? Having hesitated for a while, Han Hao turned his face to the side, deliberately avoiding Han Sen, and Han Hao thought that he would immediately hear Han Sen's screams, but the screams he heard were not from Han Sen, but from Liu Fang. Han Hao quickly turned to see what had happened and couldn't believe his own eyes. Liu Fang's alpha alloy broadsword was now in Han Sen's hands, and Liu Fang himself was pinned to the ground with an arm twisted behind himself, screaming while too scared to struggle. Han Hao did not see how it happened, but the others saw clearly. They were so surprised that they stood there with their mouths wide open. When Liu Fang slashed his broadsword at Han Sen, everyone thought Ass Freak was doomed. But as soon as Liu Fang wielded the alpha alloy broadsword, Han Sen grabbed his hand and twisted, bringing Liu Fang to his knees. Han Sen then knocked his back with a knee and held him down to the floor. Now, no one could believe Ass Freak would have such fine movements, and they were all in a daze. There was no sound except for Liu Fang's screams. "What the heck are you doing? Kill this bastard!" "Ah!" Liu Fang shouted at the onlookers while screaming. Crack! His arm was broken by Han Sen before he could even finish his sentence. Covered in a cold sweat, Liu Fang was deathly pale. Liu Fang's friends saw this and rushed to Han Sen, raising their weapons. Han Sen was still holding Liu Fang's alpha alloy broadsword in his hand and used it to block the first alloy weapon swung at him. To his surprise, the weapon was cut in half by Liu Fang's broadsword instantaneously. "This dumbass had such a nice broadsword. It's at least worth 1 to 2 million, Han Sen thought, and decided not to give it back. In a short while, all the other weapons were cut off by Han Sen, and their owners were scared off. No one dared to attack Han Sen anymore. Han Hao was stunned, almost thinking he was in a dream. Liu Fang had a strength rating of 6.7 and a nice weapon, so he enjoyed quite a lot of attention in Steel Armor Shelter. Although Han Hao had a mutant beast soul weapon, he knew he was no match for Liu Fang. All of a sudden, Liu Fang became the one lying on the floor without his weapon, while Han Sen became the winner. The change was so drastic that Han Hao couldn't process it. Hadn't he been isolated both Xin Shen and Son of Heaven since he entered the shelter? Didn't he fail to hunt even a primitive creature? Didn't he? Han Hao looked at Han Sen blankly, with a variety of complex emotions entangling his mind. Han Sen did not continue the fight with the rest, but went back to take Liu Fang's sheath away, hung the sheath on his own belt, and returned his new broadsword to his new sheath. "The next time you want compensation, just come to me," said Han Sen as he strode toward the gate of Steel Armor Shelter. The onlookers all looked at him as if he was the first time seeing him. "Stop!" Someone approached riding a beast soul mount while Han Sen was about to enter the gate. It was Lao Tianyang, Son of Heaven's henchman. "Lao, Ass Freak broke my arm and seized my broadsword. You have to avenge me!" shouted Liu Fang in delight at the sight of Lao Tianyang. "Douchebag." Lao Tianyang first glanced at Liu Fang and then at Han Sen. "I was wondering who was daring to hurt my guy. So was you, scum." Lao Tianyang took out an alloy whip and whacked it at Han Sen. Han Sen paused and wielded his broadsword at the whip. The two weapons collided. Han Sen and Lao Tianyang both shuddered. Lao Tianyang suddenly shouted, "How come you have such strength?" Lao Tianyang's own strength rating had reached 9.6. Although his whack didn't have all of his strength, Hansen must have at least an 8.0 rating to have blocked the whip, which he could not believe. Chapter 38. My Guy. This person must die. Lao Tianyang suddenly had an urge to kill Hansen, and was about to raise his whip again when he looked at Hansen. However, he stopped and his whole body became tense. Hansen had put away the broadsword and held Doomsday in his hand. Drawing the string to its fullest, he pointed the arrow at Lao Tianyang. Although Lao Tianyang did not recognize Doomsday, thanks to his rich experience in fighting, he could smell the danger from Hansen and his bow, and stayed completely still. The two were in a deadlock. Lao Tianyang did not dare move, and Hansen did not have the confidence to kill Lao Tianyang with only one shot. Even time seemed to stand still. The onlookers were completely shocked. While Hansen beat Liu Fang and his friends, they simply couldn't believe it. And now he is well matched with Lao Tianyang? Lao Tianyang was one of Son of Heaven's henchmen. His strength was nearing 10.0, and even he didn't dare to move with Hansen's arrow pointed at him. Anyone with a strength rating of more than 9.0 would be among the top 100 in steel armor shelter. There were more than 100,000 people. That someone like this could be scared by Hansen was an overwhelming fact to all. No one knew how Hansen could get such strength while isolated by both Xin Shen and Son of Heaven. "Hansen, put your bow down," said Xin Shen, leading her gang, who was riding a beast soul mount. Hansen put his bow away. His strength was still weaker than Lao Tianyang, and Hansen was not sure if he could shoot his opponent while Lao had his guard up. Keeping the posture was consuming energy very fast, and the deadlock was not good for Hansen. "Miss Xin, I'll kill this bastard for you," said Lao Tianyang, whipping at Hansen, who had already disarmed himself. Hansen seemed to be prepared for this and was about to block the whip with Doomsday. Before he acted, a Beast Soul bronze sword was thrown over and hit the whip. The strength of the throw was so fierce that the whip fell out of Lao Tianyang's hand. "I will discipline my guy, and you can mind your own business." Xin Shen looked at Lao Tianyang coldly and summoned back her sword before she rode into the shelter. "Follow me." Xin Shen turned back and commanded Hansen. Hansen quickly caught up to her and followed her gang into the shelter. The entire steel armor shelter was suddenly in an uproar. Asfreak beat Liu Fang and his friends, was well matched against Lao Tianyang, and was, most importantly, declared by Xin Shen to be her guy. All the news was driven everyone mad. No one understood what had happened. It was all guesswork. Did they develop a love affair after the stab? I had to learn from Asfreak and stab a beautiful, capable woman in the ass. Maybe I can become rich and powerful. Xin Shen looks so serious, but she's actually a flirt. Rumors spread across the entire steel armor shelter, and Hansen was once again put under the spotlight. However, Hansen's strength was not really the focus. People cared more about whether he was Xin Shen's boy toy. Even Xin Shen's gang looked at Hansen weirdly. "You know archery?" asked Xin Shen after she called Hansen to a hall. "I used to practice," Hansen shrugged. "You can use Doomsday, so you must have worked hard on it," said Xin Shen matter-of-factly. "You can join Bullseye and follow me in the future." "No," Hansen refused. Xin Shen bit her lips and said snappily, "You just offended Lao Tianyang. Without my protection, do you suppose he'd let you live?" "Thank you for your kindness, but I'll deal with it myself," Hansen said indifferently. You should know who I am. My men are more or less related to the military, and Bullseye belongs to me. Follow me, and you'll gain great advantages in applying for military schools." Xin Shen suppressed her anger and said to Hansen, "I never wanted to go to military school." Hansen knew that he could apply to a military school for further education after he finished integrated compulsory education. However, all military schools had high requirements of fitness. If one's fitness index was below 10 before the first evolution, one had no chance at military schools. For Hansen to reach a 10 in the fitness index was not hard, but he wasn't interested in going to school at all. He'd rather put more effort into hunting. Exasperated, Xin Shen said, "Without education from a military school and an aristocratic title, you could only be an ordinary soldier when you are of age to serve. Only through a military school will you be able to become something in the army. At least by then, you wouldn't have been sacrificed. Chapter 39. St. Paul. Let's talk about this another time. I have to go now, and thank you so much for all your help. I'll buy you dinner sometime, said Hansen, ready to go back. He knew that Xinshen had made sense, but he had his own plan. He wanted to get an aristocratic title before he turned 20 and went to serve, because aristocrats had certain privileges in the army and would not be sent to the front. Stop, have I excused you? Xinshen stared at Hansen fiercely. Station master, please, that's not my thing, said Hansen bitterly. It's fine if you don't want to go. Xinshen suddenly smiled at Hansen and said, if you do not go, each time you enter the teleport station, I will fight you. Looking at her evil smile, Hansen's heart sank. He knew that Xinshen hadn't tried her best at all when fighting with him in the past, because he was no match for her at that moment. Judging from her expression, he knew if he declined, he would really have a hard time in the future. Fine, I'll join Bullseye then, Hansen said, depressed. Xinshen snapped at Hansen. Do you have any idea how many people in Steel Armor Shelter want to join my gang? And you just acted like I asked you to take poison. Freedom is priceless. And to lose my freedom is exactly like taking poison, Hansen sighed. Then you can die a slow death. Even if you died and became a ghost, you'd still be my ghost, Xinshen pouted and said. Hansen knew that Xinshen had made up her mind, and he accepted the offer unwillingly. Feeling dejected, he left the hall. Xinshen watched him go and was very pleased by his upset look for some strange reason. She couldn't help but smile. Station master, why do you have to recruit such a person to Steel Armor Gang? He's not worthy of being a member of Bullseye. A woman at the same age as Xinshen came out from the side door and asked after Hansen had left. Menli, trust me, although this guy can be a bastard sometimes, he does have great potential in some aspects, Xinshen told Yang Menli seriously. Xinshen had witnessed what a fast learner and diligent student Hansen was. Repeatedly defeated by her, he didn't go down but grew stronger and stronger. Now even she had to take him seriously. Such progress and mentality were truly amazing. Xinshen's opinion of Hansen had improved a great deal, or else she wouldn't have defended him in front of everybody. Hansen returned to his room and teleported back before Xinshen had a chance to leave God's Sanctuary. He was not the least bit interested in going to military school. Before, it would have been a great option for him because he could learn hypogena arts there. Now, with Jade Skin, he didn't have to waste his time in a military school at all. It would be much wiser for him to spend time hunting and increasing his geno points. As for Bullseye, Hansen had even less interested in joining. Although, as a member of Bullseye, he could gain assistance from Xinshen Information Network to improve his chances of finding mutant and sacred blood creatures, he would also have to share the meat that he hunted with the rest of her team. Hansen decided to go hunting alone after some preparation. If Xinshen didn't see him for a while, she would probably forget about the whole thing. Hansen wanted to buy an alpha alloy dagger with his 150,000 he had earned, but now he had a broadsword he had seized from Liu Feng, so the other was no longer necessary. The broadsword was made out of special alloy with Z metal, which made it very stiff. Its edge could easily cut primitive creatures open, so weapons made from this kind of alloy had always been expensive. Nice! Hansen touched the edge, and his finger was cut immediately. Looking at the shiny edge, Hansen loved the weapon so much that he couldn't even put it down. It's worth the price, Hansen thought to himself. The Han family had an alloy business before, and although it was a small factory, they had unique formulas. Their products may not be as good as this broadsword, but could also cut open the skin of some primitive creatures. So the business was quite profitable. If it was not for those terrible family members, their company could surely be among the top 3 on planet Roka. But now the company was owned by the Starry Group. Hansen was too young back then, and to this day he still didn't quite understand why Starry Group had acquired the company. He knew his dad's death must have had something to do with Starry Group, but he had no ability to find out the truth, so he had to lay low. Son, today I have some important work. I have something important at work. Can you take Yan to school? Lao Sulan knocked on the door and asked Hansen, School has started already? I didn't know that. No worries, Mom, I'll take her, Hansen quickly said. School started a few days ago, and you were in God's Sanctuary, so I didn't want to bother you, said Lao Sulan. Which school is it? It is St. Paul, and I used the money you left to pay the tuition. Lao Lao Sulan felt slightly uneasy. She had spent almost all the money on Yan's school. Great, St. Paul is the best on planet Roka except for the posh schools. Hansen was very happy. He didn't have an aristocratic title for the moment and couldn't send Yan to a posh school, but a good private school was still much better than integrated compulsory education. After chatting with his mother, Hansen took Han Yan on a maglev train to school. The entrance of St. Paul was almost blocked by private aircrafts, and some were even deluxe. Almost all rich people without an aristocratic title would send their children to St. Paul, and almost all students here were from affluent families. Walking his sister to school, Hansen saw a middle-aged fat guy getting off an aircraft with a flirtatious woman on his side and an 8-year-old boy in his arms. He paused, as the middle-aged fat man happened to be his uncle, Han Lei. Chapter 40. Physical Test Center, also known as St. Paul II. What are you doing here? Han Lei was surprised to see Hansen here. Taking Yan to school, replied Hansen. Yan is coming to St. Paul? Han Lei looked at Hansen and Han Yan, unconvinced. Since a few days ago, said Hansen, ready to walk Han Yan into the school gate. Han Lei thought for a while and ran in front of Hansen. He grabbed Hansen's wrist, enraged. I knew it. My elder brother managed the company for so many years, he must have embezzled lots of money. You were just lying to me and not being able to come up with $2 million while you were out there spending millions to send Yan to St. Paul. I'm telling you, this money belongs to the whole family, just like the house. We must split it or what? What can you do about it? Hansen looked at Han Lei coldly. He was completely disappointed in his relatives and wouldn't give them a single cent more. Boy, watch it, I'm your uncle. Han Lei flinched when Hansen was watching him, but he didn't plan to let Hansen walk free. Uncle? Hansen smiled dismissively. Well, please, go home and review the legal documents we signed and see if you have any right to anything we own. From now on, do not think you can take a penny from us ever again. The reason why Hansen gave them the $2 million so promptly was to draw the line between his relatives and his real family. To get the $2 million, his relatives all signed a document prepared by Mr. Zhang, which made it impossible for them to take anything from Hansen's family in the future. That is fraud. I'll go find your mom right away. How dare you hide this money from us? Cried Han Lei angrily. Uncle, don't even think about it. I have a right to kill a trespasser. Hansen looked at Han Lei gloomily. Little brat, how dare... Han Lei threw a punch at Hansen furiously. With a blank expression, Hansen grabbed Han Lei's arm and threw Han Lei over his shoulder. Han Lei shouted out in pain. Uncle, if you want to die, welcome to our house. Hansen stared at Han Lei coldly. Han Lei opened his eyes wide, as if he didn't know Hansen. The look on Hansen's face terrified him. Han Lei was an evolver. Although, just by maxing out primitive genome points, he didn't really do much in Second God's Sanctuary, but he was still an evolver. It was abnormal for Hansen, who hadn't evolved at all, that could give him a shoulder throw that easily. His nephew suddenly looked like a different person. Hansen suddenly smiled and pulled Han Lei up. I'm sure my aunt doesn't know about this woman and child. I think I should let her know, Hansen whispered, while Han Lei was still shocked about the sudden change. You think my wife will believe you? Han Lei said madly. It doesn't matter as long as she believes this. Hansen showed Han Lei the comlink on his wrist. He turned the video camera on the moment he saw Han Lei. You! Shocked, Han Lei reached to grab the comlink. Hansen only moved slightly and making Han Lei fall again. Uncle, we can negotiate a price, and I can sell you this. Hansen smiled as he was about to pull him up again. Han Lei grinned and suddenly reached to twist Hansen's hand, ready to break it and seize his comlink. Hansen flipped his hand and held Han Lei's hand down, making him kneel on the floor and howl like a pig. Uncle, it seems that you have no intention to negotiate. I'll have to show this to Auntie then. Hansen released Han Lei's hand and turned to leave. Wait! Han Lei quickly stopped Hansen and gritted his teeth. 10,000! I'll give you 10,000, you delete it. Hansen turned away. 200,000, or I'll go to my aunt. Okay. Han Lei limping over to take hold of Hansen. Thanks then. Cash or bank transfer? Hansen asked with a faint smile. Han Lei unwillingly transferred 200,000 to Hansen. Well, now can you delete it? Of course I'll delete it. But only when I'm in a good mood, Hansen said and walked away. Brad, you lied to me. Hunlei became furious and raised his fist. However, he froze at the sight of Han Sen, as his nephew's movements had really left a strong impression. Uncle, I received your money, so I will certainly delete it, but I did not say when I will do it, so you better keep me in a good mood. Han Sen patted Hunlei on the shoulder and stopped smiling. He whispered, also, do not let me see you in my home again. Otherwise, I will kill you. Hunlei shuddered, and for some reason, he knew Han Sen meant it. Shit, that brat has become evil. Hansen cursed as Hunlei cursed as Han Sen moved away, ashamed that he was terrified by the boy. Hunlei was still nervous deep down and changed his mind about going to Han Sen's home. After sending Yan to school, Han Sen was in a great mood. On his way back, he saw a physical test center and went in, wanting to know his current physical fitness level. Thus ending chapter 40. So, this is the end of the video. Thank you very much. Yeah, look forward to the next one.